Hi, today we're going to be working in on lesson 16, session 1. This is going to be exploring multiplying decimals. We've worked over the last couple of days with multiplying a decimal times a whole number, and now we're going to be moving into what happens when we multiply a decimal times another decimal, or different ways that we're multiplying decimals. We're going to really dive into it over the next 4 days. So we're going to be working today in our Ready Classroom Math Workbook on pages 325 through 328. So we will go ahead and go ahead and open your Ready Classroom Math Workbook to page 325. So on page 325, it says, you know how to multiply a decimal and a whole number. Now you will learn how to multiply two decimals. Use what you know to solve the problem below. Martin has 50 cents. Sarah has 10 times as much money as Martin. John has 1/10 as much money as Martin. Does Sarah have more money than Martin? Does John have more money than Martin? So we've got a lot to think about here. So first of all, what is this talking about? We're talking about money that Martin has. That's what we're talking about. And what is it that we need to know? So this is interesting because this is the first time I think that we've come up to where we have two questions in this. We have two things we need to answer in this question. So first we need to answer, does Sarah have more money than Martin? And then we also need to solve, does John have more money than Martin? So the important information we need to know is that Martin has 50 cents. Sarah has 10 times as much as Martin. And John has 1/10 as much money as Martin. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put Martin here in the middle. So Martin has 50 cents. Okay. Now we know that Sarah has 10 times as much money as Martin. So Sarah has 50 cents times 10 because she has 10 times more than Martin does. And then John has 10 times, or has 1/10 of as much money as Martin. So 50 times 1/10 is how much money John has. So the good news is that we have kind of dealt with what we do when this happens. So now this, we'll work on this one when we get down there, but with Sarah, we know what to do. Remember, when we multiply by 10, that means that we're going to move that decimal place over one place value. And when we're multiplying, we move it one place to the right. This was that powers of 10 that we learned a few weeks back. So if we start with 50 cents and we're going to multiply it by 10, we're going to take this decimal and move it one place to the right because there's 1 0 in 10. So we know that Sarah has $5. We also could have done 50 cents plus 50 cents plus 50 cents plus 50 cents 10 times, and we would have gotten up to $5. So Sarah has $5 because we just moved that decimal over one place. Now it's a little different when we're working with John. Now, remember that when we multiplying, when we're multiplying by a tenth, what we would do in this case is we're going to we want to know what is 1/10 of 50 cents. So if that would be the same thing as, what 1/10 is the same thing as 50 cents divided by 10. Because remember when we can rewrite this as a division sentence to make it and find out the answer. So if we have 50 cents and we divide it into 10 parts, we're going to move our decimal to the left one place. So this decimal is going to move over one place to the left, and that's going to equal 5 cents because we've moved it one place to the left. So Martin has 50 cents. Sarah has 10 times more, and she has $5. John has 10 times less, or a tenth. This means 10 times less, or 1/10 of what Martin has. And so that means that John has only 5 cents. He does not have very much money at all. He's just got a nickel. So does Sarah have more money than Martin? Yes. Does John have more money than Martin? No, because Sarah has 10 times more, which means that she's going to have more money than him. Since John has 1/10 of what Martin has, he's going to have less because we're dividing what Martin has by 10 to find out how much John has. All right, let's keep going. It will make sense, I promise, as we go through these next couple of days. So, do both Sarah and John have more money than Martin? We just talked about that. So, Sarah has more money than Martin because Martin has 50 cents, Sarah has $5. But Martin has more money than John. So Martin has more money than John because Martin has 50 cents and John only has 5 cents. So Sarah does have more money, John does not. Looking ahead, you have seen that finding 1/10 of a number is the same as multiplying the number by 1/10. So I'm going to show you kind of how this works, okay? So if we're looking at this model here, it says, explain how the unit square model shows that 1/10 of 1 is the same as 1/10 times 1. So this shaded part here shows us 1/10 of 1 whole. So since if this whole thing were shaded in, that would be 1 whole. But what we're looking at is what is 1/10 of the whole. That means if we took this whole and divided it into 10 parts, what would 1/10 of 1 whole be? So the shaded part shows 1/10 of the whole. So 1/10 of 1 is 1/10 times 1. So because the answer would be 1/10 times 1 is 1/10. Now, that's kind of what we did last week. Now, here's the piece that's new for this week. What happens when we multiply? In the area model, we're going to multiply here. What is 1/10 times 1/10? Or what is 1/10 of 1/10? So in the area model, one column is now shaded blue. And then, so we still have our 1/10 of one whole that's red. So this is 1/10. Now I want to know what is 1/10 of that 1/10, or what is 1/10 times 1/10. So the way that this works is I'm going to use this area model. That's what's shaded here. And first I shaded my first 1/10, which is like this 1/10 here. Okay. And then I broke that 1/10 into 10 more parts. So now I have 10 tenths. So I'm going to show this to you in another way in a minute. So I know that 1/10 of 1/10 is 1/100th. I know, blow your mind crazy. Now I want to show you right now using in the cubes. Okay, so this unit cube here, this would be like the red line. So this, if I had, so this is showing 1/10. Okay, this is 1/10. Now, if I want to know what is, it's not focusing. Sometimes, let me throw something on there that might focus on. There we go. Okay, so this is showing 1/10. It would take 10 of these to make a whole. Now, if I am multiplying 1/10 times 1/10, that's the same as saying what is 1/10 of 1/10. So I have 1/10. I want to find out what is 1/10 of this whole piece. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Oh my goodness, did I really lose one? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Oh, there we go. Okay, so there are 10 there. So how much would be 1/10 of this 1/10? And that would be 1/100th. Okay, let's try that again. So 10 of these sticks makes a whole, or it would be 100 of these units would fill one hole. This is 1/10. 10 of these fill 100. 1/10 of one hole is 1/100th. We're going to keep going, but I want to make sure that you, at least I showed this to you because I want to give you just an overview. We're going to keep practicing, I promise. Now, how would you change the model to show 2/10 of 100th is the same as 2/10 times 1/10. So right now, we already have done, this is showing 1/10 of 1/10. Now, if I wanted to know what is 2/10 of 1/10, I'm going to shade in a second tenth. So now I'm saying, okay, now I have 2/10 of 1/10, which gives us how many hundredths? 2 hundredths. If this is 1/10 and I want to know what is 2/10 of this tenth, I'm going to break off 2. And my answer is going to be 2 hundredths. A tenth times a tenth equals 100. Now, before I go to the next page, I do want to go over really quickly with you a little cheat sheet I made. It may not make much sense to you right now, but this is kind of what we're going to be looking at over the next couple of days. Now, last week when we were working, we were only multiplying a whole number times a tenth, a hundredth. We never multiplied times a thousandth, but I put that here. So if we had a whole number times a tenth, remember there was only one digit after the decimal, so therefore our answer was always a tenth. If we had a whole number times a hundredth, our answer was always a hundredth. And if we had a whole number times a thousandth, our answer would have always been a thousandth. So anytime you multiply a whole number times a decimal, whatever the place value of that final decimal is, that's going to be your answer. Now that only works when you're multiplying, oh, that did not give me a good line. That only works when you are multiplying a whole number times a decimal. Now, when you multiply a decimal times a decimal, this is where it gets a little bit different. So if you have a tenth and you multiply it by a tenth, which is what we did in this example here, a tenth times a tenth, we figured out that it equaled 100th because you're finding what is 1/10 of 1/10. If you take 1/10 and you break it into 10 parts, that's what you're doing with a tenth times a tenth. So that's going to give you 100th. Another trick to remember is that a tenth has one digit after the decimal. This tenth has one digit after decimal. So your final product is going to have 2 digits when you add them together after the decimal. So a tenth times a tenth is always 100th. A tenth times 100th, a tenth times 100th is going to have 3 digits after the decimal. Therefore, your resulting product is going to be 1,000th. And then a tenth times a thousandth, which we will never do, but I wanted to show, I mean, you'll do in life, but not in 5th grade. A tenth times a thousandth would give you a 10,000th there, because there would be 1, 2, 3, 4 digits after the decimal, 1, 2, 3, 4 digits after the decimal. And then it also goes the other way. If you have a 100th times a 10th, you just flip-flopped this 10th and 100th, your resulting answer would be 1,000th. And if you multiply a 100th times a 100th, you're going to get a 10,000th. 100, because there are 2 digits after each decimal in each of our factors. Therefore, we're going to add up all of those digits that come after the decimal, and then our resulting answer is going to be a 10,000th. That was a lot for today, but I just wanted you guys to kind of look at this and just soak it in a little bit, because we'll revisit it over the next few days. So finally, for decimal place value, this is going to seem really easy after what we just did. The decimal place value is the value of each number to the right of the decimal. So here's our decimal. We have a 3 after the decimal. That means we have 3 tenths, because this 3 is in the tenths place. Over here, we have 35 hundredths. This 5 is worth 5 hundredths, because there is a 5 in the hundredths place. If we had 54 hundredths, that's the same as saying 5 times 1/10, which would put the 5 in the tenths place, plus 4 times 1/100th, because there's a 4 in the hundredths place. If we look over at this place value chart and we have 7 hundredths and 3 tenths, we know that we can put in that 0 placeholder and add them, or we know that we have 37 hundredths, because there's a 3 in the tenths place and a 7 in the hundredths place. Finally, we could rewrite 29 hundredths to be 2 tenths plus 9 hundredths, because there's a 2 in the tenths place and a 9 in the hundredths place. All right, that was a massive lesson for today, but I'm glad that you guys made it through it. I'm really proud of you. We're going to go ahead and finish page 327 and page 328 doing numbers 2, 3, and 4 on your own. As always, if you have any questions, you can always email your teacher. Otherwise, I'll see you tomorrow.